I'm Gary Bowles. I was the host of Global Skills Day 21. And as a follow up to our event, I'm interviewing John Fallon, who's the former CEO of Pearson and is now focused on a portfolio of different activities, but is one of the few people that I know that has such a breathtaking view of the broad arena of learning and especially with young adult to later adult learning. But it really has, I think, one of the unique ecosystem views of the ways that the various facets of the diamond are being assembled in terms of how we learn today and how we might learn tomorrow. So, John, welcome.
Thank you.
John, I'd like to just start off. We've had some marvelous conversations about sort of your vision about how learning is changing. But one of the questions that came out of Global Skills Day was, what are we driving towards when we're talking about a better future of work and a better future of learning in 10 years, 15 years, whatever that comfortable window is? What are the top two or three things that you think need to be changed in our education systems, our learning systems, to be able to have a much more inclusive future of work and learning?
So I think as we are now hopefully starting to emerge from the pandemic, it's time to sort of revisit, I think, a lot of the assumptions that we were making about the future of work and how people are going to need to reskill and retrain that we were making 2 or 3 years ago. And I think there's three big trends that have been accelerated through the pandemic. One is obviously just the whole role of e-commerce, that just e-commerce has taken on and has accelerated in a way that is having a dramatic impact on the retail sector. Secondly, I think digitization of everything. And third, I think that AI, machine learning, moves from being something that a lot of people were talking about doing to something that most major companies are doing. And I think that that has profound implications for the world of work, because I think up until now, digital transformation had sort of hollowed out perhaps a lot of the middle income jobs, but it had actually left a lot of the lower paid and lower skilled jobs relatively untouched, or it was quite easy for people in one lower paid or lower skilled profession to shift to another lower paid or lower skilled profession. What I think is going to happen because of those big three trends is, if you look 10 years ahead, there'll be plenty of jobs to go around, but there will actually be proportionately fewer lower skilled, lower paid jobs, and proportionately more higher paid, higher skilled jobs. And those will be in areas like healthcare, because I think because of demographics and wearable technology and all the breakthroughs in life expectancy and the like, and a whole range of sort of digital related skills. That's great news for humankind if we get it right. But traditionally, as a society, we have been terrible at upskilling. So actually, this requires the biggest upskilling of humankind in our history. So that is a huge, huge challenge, but it's a huge opportunity. It's a huge opportunity because I think it helps us to address what I think are two of the biggest drivers of division in our society, which is a spatial divide, the agglomeration of more and more people in a smaller number of bigger cities, and the smaller towns and cities that are left behind. In a future of work where there's much more blended and hybrid learning, there's a chance to readdress that spatial divide. And there's a big opportunity. The second big divide is around education, and the divide has been between those who have a university degree and those who don't. And there's a real opportunity to address that as well because of the need to upskill and to reskill. So that's the opportunity and the challenge. Waving my magic wand, I would do there's two things that I would absolutely love to see happen more than anything else. One is eradicate digital inequality. So to make access to high-speed broadband, a sort of smart device, all of that as basic a human right as housing, food, water. So just find a way to completely eliminate the digital divide and give everyone access to infrastructure, device, and the skills to use it. That'd be the first thing to do. And the second thing I would wave my magic wand is to accelerate the development. I can't think of a better way of describing it as to what's the currency of this future of work, because the currency is still the degree to a greater less extent. That's the main unit of measurement of someone's sort of skill or status in this society. We were talking before you started recording about Western governors, which have been some of the pioneers of competency-based education. You have people like Southern New Hampshire and lots of other folks doing that. Lots of employers talking about, let's focus less on whole jobs and more on skills and tasks to be done. All those things are sort of chipping away at the overwhelming sort of, primacy of the degree. But if we could accelerate that and make that happen quicker, and the reason that's so important, because that's the signal and the signpost that I think unlocks how companies recruit, how parents and schools and communities think about education and training and pathways and opportunities for young people. And I think it unlocks finance and how we fund and finance and support the redevelopment and reskilling. So I think this is, the challenge is nothing short of the biggest upskilling in human history, with huge opportunities that provides. But the challenge is we've never done it on this scale before. And I think those are two things we have to get right quickly to create the base camp, if you like, from which other things can happen.
Well, and on a global basis as well. So now you and I, as we talked before, I know sometimes I'm a little bit of the word police. I'm not a big fan of the words upskilling and reskilling and outskilling and side skilling, and they kind of sound like the industrial era processes we want to live behind. But the takeaway is that we've discussed, my thesis is always that the internet evaporates the middle of markets. It's still always the high end, and there's lower friction to entry at the low end, but it eradicates the middle. And what you were just saying is, well, the middle's going to go away, or rather the middle is going to change so dramatically, and a lot of that stuff's going to get automated. How do you see, what's happened in other arenas where technology comes in is then there tends to be all the pieces, like with media and articles and media businesses, all sort of unbundled, as our friend John Hagel calls it. And then there's sort of a new aggregator or new set of aggregators that pull all that stuff together. Do you think that's going to happen as well in the learning business? Do you think that the existing educational institutions are going to have a harder and harder time if they don't become completely digital? And then do you think it's going to be one of these sort of winner take all markets where somebody's going to get it right, where they're going to have essentially all the different courses available in the world on one platform? Or do you think it's going to continue to be a healthy ecosystem with a lot of different players and a lot of people offering in-person learning, in between, often is called hybrid learning, and online only learning, and all the above?
I think it will be a hybrid and a blended approach. If you look at the industries that have been most disrupted by technology to date, it has been sectors like, for example, one I know very well, educational publishing. It's actually been a lot of the, music. Okay, we're going again. I saw it again. So I think the industries that have seen the biggest disruption are those industries that are really about intellectual property, which you can very quickly and easily remake from a physical to a digital. If you look at a lot of sectors of society and business, the level of disruption has been much more modest, where it involves physical products, physical activities, face-to-face activities. And so I think that's the way this is going to go. I think it becomes much more flexible. I think, yes, online and virtual learning takes on a much bigger role. But, if you're the biggest single, the single industry or vertical that will create the largest numbers of new jobs, probably over the next 10 years, is the healthcare sector. Okay. Now, clearly through the pandemic, we've seen big growth in sort of virtual consultations, but clearly most healthcare happens
In person.
face to face, person to person. And to your point earlier, I take the challenge about upskilling, reskilling. Where are those new jobs being created? It's requiring people to be who can combine sort of empathy with caring, with communicating well, with interpreting data from wearable technology, from shifting from looking after people in institutional homes to looking after them in their own homes. So that's a great example where some of the, what you would call low skilled jobs that are in nursing homes become higher skilled jobs, because these people are now required to go and visit people in their own home, have good levels of customer service, good communication skills, ability to empathize, as I say, be able to interpret data and then communicate and share the data that they're picking up from the devices. I don't see how you can do that purely in a virtual world, but clearly nor is it something that you would do purely in an analog way. So it's going to be, I think, increasingly a combination of the two. And I think that's true across whole sectors. I mean, it looks like, the whole working from home debate, most people seem to think that the jobs that can be done virtually, and let's remember, they are still a minority of jobs. They are the sort of jobs that you and I, for want of a better word, they are computer-based jobs, people who do the work doing what we're doing at a terminal. That's probably still only 25% of the workforce. It's probably not going to grow much more than that. And even there, reality is it's probably going to be 3 days, 3 and 2, maybe 3 days physically in an office, 2 days working outside an office. So I think digital and technology has a much bigger role to play, but it'd be wrong to think that it completely displaces everything, because that's not going to happen.
Now, what happens though? I mean, the picture you're painting, especially of jobs continually changing, and not just that, needing to develop skills that hopefully people get paid better for. But it not only, it has to be lifelong, like it's going to have to be continuous, right? Because those fields are going to continually change. And what often happens is you're talking about a level of agency and access, right? The people need to continually have the energy and the push to continually learn, and then they've also got to have access to that work, right? And as you say, not all of it's going to be digital. So how do we solve
Gary,
that?
I like you as the word police officer. So what's the word, rather than reskilling, retraining, relearning, what the phrase you would use?
Oh, so it's more, so to me, it's more just training, just learning. But the process is going to continually be trying to ensure that those who are least advantaged are the ones that have access and can continually be able to have the agency to continually be trained. So do you have a magic wand for those populations to help them?
Yeah, well, I do. And that's where I think the, sharing the benefits, frankly, of a liberal arts education more widely is important, because one of the things that I think you do learn is the ability to learn and the ability to change and to adapt. One of the things that strike me is that if we'd been having this conversation 2 years ago, I think, like a lot of CEOs who've led businesses through huge disruptive changes, I'd have quoted you the Tom Friedman line about, technological change is exponential and human change is linear. And one of the big challenges is you can upgrade your systems and shift to the cloud much more quickly than you can change the culture. I think the pandemic has said, well, actually, is that true? Because I think what we have actually seen is the ability of societies and culture and companies, whether it's the national health system here in the UK, whether it's hospital systems across the US, healthcare systems across America, whether it's major companies, small enterprises fighting for their survival our ability to adapt and change has actually proved when it has to be, it can be exponential. And how do we not lose that now? Do you know what I mean? And actually, but I think that is a big part of this. I think agency is really important. I mean, you and I were talking before. I think this sort of you know, a lot of companies now thinking about education as an employee or learning as an employee benefit, much in the way as healthcare or pension provision has always been. But what's the sort of top down role and what's the sort of bottom up role? What's the role in the employer in explaining how the world is going to change and what skills an employee has that is relevant to today and tomorrow, and where do they need to change and how do they think about that, and what capabilities and provisions are provided. And if you look at the business models of people like sort of Coursera and 2U and Pearson and others, they're very much now looking to the enterprise, as you know, but you know, as we all know, any higher education president can tell you, you can take students to the learning, but they have to be motivated and engaged and want to learn for it to happen. So how do we also give employees agency? And that's why I think changing financing models. I think countries should be looking at, you know, do you give every should it be a basic right of every citizen to have some lifelong learning credit or bank that they can draw on at different points, new models? I was talking to a small startup this morning that is basically lending people money to get a new qualification and then taking a cut on the increased salary that they get as a result. And they're doing everything from, you know, middle career executives going to do MBAs to people in Leeds, a city in Yorkshire, who want to retrain as crane operatives, you know, and who can get a 10,000 a year salary bump. And there's a much, you know, is the signaling there is where you're much more directly linking salary progression and then how do you get accredited and all of that. But I think there's new and interesting models, and getting this balance right between, yes, employers have to take their roles seriously, but we also need to create the right incentives for employees to take ownership, and each of us to take, as you say, agency and responsibility, but have the skills and the capabilities, which is why I think digital, you know, digital is so important, but then also the right signaling, but also giving people the financial incentives and support to make these changes.
Yeah, I think John, you're exactly right. I mean, this is the way the systemic change is going to happen: is if we get the various facets of the time, we get all those pieces working together. So, anyway, John, our time is always too short in these conversations. Thank you so much for your perspective and wisdom. Looking forward to hearing what you do next.
And I
Going
look
forward
forward to it.
in your own career as you continually upskill.
I am an example of the need to be continuing training and retraining and reskilling as we go, Gary.
Absolutely. No, you're an exemplar for us all. All right, John, thank you so much. Take care.
Okay.